Welcome back into another episode of George in the Jungle, brought to you by Remington Tavern. As always, Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m. Bourbon Whiskey Wednesday, $5 Bourbon Whiskey Wednesdays, Bottle Cap Bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. You can find them on Instagram at RemyTav Cincy. That's REMITAV Cincy with a Y. Or you can follow them on Facebook. And with that, George, we are underway.
Yes, we are. Good to see you, Aaron.
This Bearcats team is something else.
Talk about?
We are the eve before what has become very, very quickly a do or die game for your entire conference. If you lose to Colorado at Colorado, you will be the only team that has no wins in the entire conference, and Colorado would get their elusive first win, or you leave Colorado and have your own elusive first win, and maybe you can start to string something together on the heels of what could be a game changer, no pun intended. But you're also coming on the heels of a horrific offensive performance, one so bad, in fact, that it was the first time that they had scored this low of a point total since 1993. I'm not going to ask how old you were. I was 9 when that happened.
I was old, and if I remember right, that ended up being a decent season. But that was one of those old rock fights Hugs used to have back in the day, probably a conference game. But, man, I'll tell you, I walked out of there after that Kansas game, and just like everybody else, you're lower than whale dung. It's like you just can't imagine what you just witnessed. The excitement of the first half, even though it wasn't a shootout in the first half. I think it was like 26-25 or 25-24 at the half. UC up by 1. But they were competing. They came out with a heck of a lot more energy than we saw the game before. They were locking down defensively, which they've done a pretty good job of for the most part. But there was just more energy on that end of the floor and on both ends of the floor in that first half of that game. Couple things happened in the second half. One, and maybe this could be for the whole game. I don't know what's going on with that offense. There are too many possessions where it's dribble, and then the shot clock's down to where it's under 15, and then you're finally starting to get into your offense, which could barely get the ball inside the three-point line on several possessions again, just like we saw against Baylor, and it results in a rush shot, a shot clock violation, an air ball at the butt, whatever. Too many possessions were that way. Where all of them know. First half, they ran some pretty good offense, and honest to God, they missed a lot of good looks too. And I just started crunching all these numbers, and definitely there is a lid on it, as Wes said after the game. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason other than scouting and better defensive pressure on the ball that they're seeing right now to explain what's been going on with these guys. It's just it's hard to fathom that they're this bad. And I started looking at like the last 7 games, starting with the Xavier game and then the conference games. And you look at what's going on in conference games with CMOS and Jizzle and Day to a lesser extent, but their numbers are putrid. I mean, CMOS is shooting like, okay, here's his scoring in the 4 losses in a row, 4, 9, 5, and 2. Has not hit double figures in a conference game. And that's a guy who was lighting it up and shooting 50% before they got in this stretch. Jizzle, 11, 7, 5, and 3. That's his point totals in these Big 12 games. He shot 29%, CMOS 24%, CMOS 2 for 16 from 3, Jizzle 0 for 8. That's a big part of your offense. Dan, he's come back. and done pretty well when you look at the lines and the raw numbers. He scored 18, 18, 18, and then 9 against Kansas. I don't know what happened to him in the second half. You give Kansas credit for taking UC out of whatever they were doing to get Dan involved, but you got to knock on UC a little bit for not being able to respond to that. And I think they are missing open looks. I agree with Wes on that. There's too many missed open shots, but I also believe there's not enough of those. I think there's just too many wasted possessions. And you go down to the other, you look at turnovers and assists in conference play, and it's bad. It's way worse than the non-conference. I mean, it's like, it's like double the rate. I mean, their assist to turnover is 0.77 in conference play, and it was 1.5 in non-conference. So there's a lot going on they got to fix. How complicated, I don't know. I like the defensive effort, but down the stretch, they kept running that same play where they curl the guard around the screen out front. He would lose Dan and, went in for a layup, basically. A layup or a lob to somebody because whoever was under the bucket had to go stop the ball, and it left somebody open underneath. It was, there's a lot of blame to go around with what we saw Saturday. And, it's up to Wes to figure this thing out because I think, I know this sounds crazy. I walked out of the arena and I thought, okay, what are the odds they turn this around? How will they make this a successful season? Can they? And I figure it's about a 80% chance they don't, 20% chance they do. As I sit here now, it's probably more like, I don't know, 75-25. I don't feel a hell of a lot better.
Right.
But I do think they will find a way to get that win tomorrow night. I think they're a better team. Colorado's got a whole new starting 5. They've lost 3 guys. 3 went to the pros, went to the NBA. They brought in transfers, and not necessarily high-profile transfers, but I think that kid, the Division II guy, may have been Player of the Year in Division II. And I think they got an NAIA guy, which, go figure that out. But I don't know, Aaron. I'm pessimistic, but it can be fixed. It can be. They can get back. I know they're playing better competition, no doubt about it. And if you look at the games against the better competition versus, the not so great competition, that skews those numbers I was talking about. But I still think they can get back to a much more efficient offense than what we've seen in this conference play.
It just feels like, I don't know if it's a player thing. I don't know if it's a coach thing, but it feels like Cincinnati's always one step behind in the chess match. It feels like they're playing reactive basketball as opposed to proactive basketball. Like they're and the reactions are coming a segment later than it needs to be coming. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I could be way off base here, but it's frustrating. It's mind numbing.
Well, yeah, and Wes is trying. I mean, he mixed in Josh Reed a lot more the other day. CJ Frederick got some minutes, and quite honestly, when he was in, they moved the ball pretty good. I just think there's been too much stagnation with the ball. It just doesn't move a lot. And I felt like early in the Kansas game I thought, holy crap, they went to work on offense.
They were aggressive at the beginning of the game. Yes.
Oh, yeah. They drove. They were slashing. There were some cuts. And I'm not the expert in Wes's offense, but I see very little cutting for the most part. And I think that's something they need to do more of, because it seems like when they do, they get some open looks. They get some layups. Sometimes they miss those layups here lately, but they get some good shots. And you want to do that every time you have the ball. Every possession is important. And Wes alluded to that when he was asked about, the scoring totals per game and if he's happy with this or that. And he's like, I only look at scoring, per possession, which is what you should do. Each possession is its own little game, its own little chess match. And, you have to have your players ready to respond to what they're seeing defensively or what they see the defense is given to them. And I agree with your reactionary thing there that a lot of times it's almost too late by the time they see it. And I hate this dribbling for the first 20 seconds of the shot clock before there's any real motion.
To your point, 0.69 was the points per possession in the game against Kansas. 6 of 15 was their layups. So yeah, they definitely missed some layups, going 6 of 15. That's horrendous.
Yeah, and there were a few in the first half. One of them, it wasn't a layup, but it was about a 2-footer that actually was an air ball, but UC rebounded and put it back in. So that wasn't for naught. But yeah, there's been way too many missed open shots, and I think Wes is still going to have to play a little more around, with this personnel to get it right. And if that means, and I thought CJ played well defensively too. He wasn't in the game all that long, but he did some really nice things. And I think they may have to mix him in a little more and just play around with these pieces a little more until they finally get the lid off the rim and they start scoring some baskets. Because what'd you say it was, 0.6 something per
0.69.
possession?
Yep.
No, that's putrid.
Terrible.
That's putrid. So that's got to be alarming to that coaching staff. And again, I just felt like early in the game they had it going, and I don't know if Kansas countered something. It didn't look like a whole lot to me, but it just quit flowing.
Even if a team does counter what you're doing, you should be able to counter the counter. And I guess that's where I don't feel like they've been successful thus far in conference play, is playing the chess match and countering the counters and coming back with something that works. I mentioned earlier that you don't know what happened to Dan in the second half. Well, looking at the numbers here, Dan was 1 of 2 in the second half. He didn't get many opportunities, but Kansas let Seamas shoot. Seamas was 0 for 5 in the second half. He got some looks that he wasn't getting earlier in the game, and it wasn't for nothing. It was terrible. Day-Day,
Kansas, I'm going to give him some looks, to be honest with you, right now.
Right now, yeah.
It is a trend.
Jizzle 0 for 2 in that second half. Day-Day 1 of 6 in that second half. CJ Frederick 0 of 3 in the second half. Page 2 of 6, and 3 of those came down the stretch when the lead slipped away. When you had the missed dunk, you had Page taking a second 3-pointer and missing that one, and then he missed another one down the floor. It was 3 straight possessions that he missed.
Which was a shame because he was playing really well.
He was.
That missed dunk was an absolute killer. That was an absolute killer. That was a big play in that game. I don't know what happened. I can't dunk the damn ball, but I'm not 7 foot. But I don't know what happened there. I don't know how that happens, but it does happen. But, man, that was just the wrong time for that to happen. But given what little playing time he's had, to come in against Kansas and play the way he did gives you a lot of hope that this kid's going to turn out to be pretty darn good after all.
He had almost 25% of the points scored on Saturday in that game, as he has 9 of your.
He was playing with attitude. I mean, he
9 of your 40
attitude, and I like that. And I hope he gets in there and tries to be assertive. And you're going to make some mistakes when you do that. And given his little amount of time on the floor this year, I thought he performed very well overall. I mean, he did have that bad stretch late, and they all did. Like I said, with that issue they had on defense. Oh boy, that missed dunk was a killer.
Yeah, he had 9.7 rebounds in his 14 minutes. He had the least amount of minutes played in the game of anybody who played for the Bearcats, and he was probably the most productive.
Yeah, and you shake your head at some of these other numbers with these guys who did play, and I don't know. I don't think. I would like to think that Wes is not worried about hurting somebody's feelings. The name of the game is winning games. That's what Wes Miller is paid to do. So I hope none of that is going on, and that He's able to bench some guys that probably need to be benched, and he kind of did the other night when, he didn't play Tyler Betsy. And then
we
Dixon
also
injured, so he couldn't play him, or it wouldn't be wise to. So, Reed got those minutes, and those are some things he's got to be open to doing with maybe some higher profile players.
Well, Reed got 15 to your point. CJ Frederick gets 16 in the game. And you also had Day-Day, maybe unwarranted in this game because he was not any more productive than Jizzle.
No.
But Day-Day gets 26 minutes to Jizzle's 20. I had been asking, is it time to start Jizzle? After seeing the performance against Kansas.
You need to start Day-Day?
Wondering which one we should be starting at this point.
Right.
But Day-Day had Chad brought this up last night. Day-Day had the opportunity to take the point guard position from Jizzle.
He didn't. He did right. No, you're absolutely right. They're still searching there, and I didn't think they would have to do that with those two. I mean, based on what I saw last year, what I saw at the end of the year, and what you saw earlier this year, you didn't think that was going to be a problem. And again, you hope against hope that it's just, a few guys slumping at the same time, and that's what they're going through. But again, it's starting to look like a trend, not just a slump.
Yeah, I don't know how you fix it. I don't know what you do. I think winning, we know winning fixes legitimately everything. Everyone's attitude changes, confidence changes, the locker room shifts, the coaching shifts. Everyone's appreciating everybody else a little bit more. The ball starts to fall, and you get those friendly bounces in ways that you don't when you're not winning. So winning fixes everything. If you go to Colorado and you leave Colorado with a win, I think that just can blow the lid right off of this stupid hoop and get things falling the Bearcat way.
No, that's what they need. They need a confidence builder in the biggest way, and any kind of win over Kansas at home would have done that for them. But sure. It goes the other way when you only score 40. I mean, if they'd gotten out of there with a 47-46 win, they would have felt a hell of a lot better about themselves. But you would still have those questions about the offense, and it's still something they need to fix. So we'll see. But when you have more turnovers than assists in conference games, I know Wes is aware of that, and I know he's probably pulling his hair out over that fact, and probably searching for answers to fix it. And it's got to be fixed. That has got to be fixed. And if they fix it halfway, that may be good enough the way they're playing defense, as long as they're not playing a top-notch Big 12 team. They might be able to do that at Colorado on the road. It's going to be interesting tomorrow night to see all kinds of things, and not the least of which is what personnel not changes, but maybe minute distribution he does with this team going forward, because something still needs to be worked out, and he's got to be searching high and low for that.
In that second half against Kansas, you had 6 points in the paint. You had no points off of turnovers. You had no fast break points. I wonder if maybe that's where things kind of the wheels went off.
It certainly doesn't help. And when you're to me, when you're struggling like that offensively in the half court and you're really having trouble getting these sets to work and getting good open shots and making shots, push that tempo a little bit more. Make these guys go earlier in the shot clock, or make them push it and just go to the rim and pray to God you get fouled. If now you don't want to do something totally stupid and go up against a 7-footer when you're 6 foot tall and try to throw a layup in. But I felt like early in the game they were doing a pretty good job of doing that, and it just kind of dissipated as that half went along, and then it was nowhere to be found after halftime. I just feel like they need to push it a little bit more. They got to find a way to get open looks, and what better open look is there than a fast break bucket?
Well, they had their fair share of open looks against Kansas, and even throughout all of these 4 games, and they've just
Yeah,
missed.
it does. You know, I'm sitting here pontificating about that half court offense, but yeah, they missed those shots when they got them. But there's no excuse, um, really, to only score 40 points in a college basketball game.
Well, tip off in Boulder is at 9 o'clock tomorrow. The game is on ESPN Plus, so we'll see. We'll see what this Bearcat team can do. Um, they if they don't win this one,
Oh, if they don't win this, we're canceling this show. We may have to rename the website. Um, you know, Colorado, you know, they've got an experienced coach. That guy's like in his 15th year there. And you know what else? I didn't realize this. I didn't know where he was, but I was looking down the list of coaches, assistant coaches. Danny Manning is there, who was a National Player of the Year at Kansas and is an assistant coach now for Colorado. And all those old timers my age remember Danny Manning because there was a rumor, and the head coach at UC, Ed Badger, was good friends with Danny Manning's father. And the word was Danny Manning was going to come and play for Ed Badger at Cincinnati, but Ed was flaming out too bad. The Bearcats didn't wait on him. They fired him and brought in Tony Yates, and the rest is history. Manning goes to Kansas, wins a national title, National Player of the Year, and I got to see him in that tournament out in Nebraska. I was out there, and if I remember right, I think it was the first round game. Xavier played Danny Manning in Kansas and gave him a pretty good run for a while, but Kansas went on to win it all.
that's a name I'm familiar with only because I feel like I had a Danny Manning card in every pack that I bought when I was a kid growing up.
Oh, dude, he was huge in college. I mean, he was an absolute beast. He was the man.
He was a common card in the card packs that I would get back in the 90s and what have you. Ricky, what's up? Thanks for watching. In any case, there was one last thing I wanted to bring up in regards to college sports that was something that we were going to try and talk about at some point during the nightcaps, but we kind of got away from it. Thought I'd ask you what your thoughts were on this. A guy named Kevin Sweeney tweeted this out, and it looks like it was from a podcast called Wave Watch, I believe. But it says NIL agent Noah Reisenfeld claims pretty much every NIL agency charges 20% compared to NFL NBA standard of 3 to 5%. His justification: if you compare a $10 million NFL deal to a $1 million deal in college, an agent makes $300,000 in the NFL versus $200,000 in college. 20%, George.
I'm telling you what, I'm having my parents handle that if that's the case. Seriously, why in the hell would you pay anyone 20% of what you're getting to go find your gig? I would think the way schools go after these guys, you can probably, you know, do a little better on your own than paying someone 20%. Really? I mean, that's higher than the federal tax rate and then higher than the California state tax. I mean, or New York. That's crazy.
Well, and none of that is even talking about the ugly rumors that are out there of agents taking extra money from the coaches and or teams that they're delivering these players to. That is not included as part of their kickback in the 20%, or the fact that they are promising to deliver players when they sign, like they go and get players as a kid that they're representing as part of a delivery. This
is like getting slimier than it was when boosters left money under a napkin at McDonald's. I mean, it's just crazy, and it's man. What do you do about it? What are they? You know,
well,
there's got to be some regulation and some way to funnel this correctly, but they're not there yet. It's still the Wild West and then some.
That's what happens when you don't have a players union, though, right? You don't have anybody representing the players except for these guys who are telling them you got to pay us 20% to represent you.
Right. And it
So
took it took the pro sports players a while to get a handle on all this stuff because, finally, the union was able to certify guys and everything was kind of above board, with the percentages, and everyone knew what each agent would take out of it. And it became kind of a standardized thing. And hopefully they kind of get to that point. But this is really it's anytime something new starts, it doesn't matter what it is in life, someone finds a way, whether it's a loophole or a back door to finagle it. And I mean, they do it with every government program, everything out there has, a dark side where people are doing this kind of stuff. And it's a damn shame. I love money too, but God, if I took 20% from a college kid who's busting his butt playing basketball and all I'm doing is shopping him around, I don't know. I would feel pretty greasy about that.
it's reminiscent of the stuff that you and I have even talked about on previous shows, where the baseball players down in like the Dominican, Cuba,
Yeah.
things like that, they have the guys who help get them gigs in
Yes.
the minors and have to pay the people who help get them those gigs they get several $100,000 as a bonus ahead of time, and then they owe them 25% of whatever they make at the major league level later on in their careers, should they make it. So it's a gamble for the company, I guess. Gamble,
Right.
but they're raking on some of these guys like an Ellie De La Cruz or the kid out in San Diego. I can't remember his name. Anyway, it's all gross.
It is, but it does happen, and there's got to be protections put in for that. I don't know how you do it. It's hard to regulate everything. But that's just, boy, that's a shame. But I think these college guys got to know, you honestly, they'd be better off just handling it themselves and just, hey, this looks like a good fit for me. This looks like, they know players all around the country. They know what these coaches are about. Now, some guys are just going to be out for the top dollar they can get. But I think most kids want to play in a place where they do make their top dollar. They, may take a little less and can win and are a fit and are getting their playing time and their development. But I don't know if we're there yet.
You hate to see it. Moving on to the Bengals, the 25-26 regular season was announced. Home games against Baltimore, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, of course. New England, the Jets, the Jaguars, the Bears, the Lions, and the Cardinals. Road games against, again, Baltimore, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, and also Buffalo, Miami, Denver, Green Bay, and Minnesota. This team has the 17th pick in the draft. They got some decisions to make regarding T. Higgins, regarding what's left of Sheldon Rankins, regarding Jamar Chase and his. If I'm Jamar Chase coming off of a Triple Crown and an All-Pro season, I'm not playing with on a tag, a fifth-year tag. Figure something out. You have Trey Hendrickson, who wanted an extension last off season, and
now he can ask for it, I guess, right?
Well, and deservedly so. He's arguably we'll find out if he is indeed the defensive player of the year, but there's certainly an argument for it. But I don't know what this team's going to do. We'll see.
No,
you don't have a defensive coordinator yet, so who's even to say? I don't imagine there to be a giant shift in what the defense is. I can't imagine you go away from the 4-3 and end up in a 3-4. But stranger things have happened, so we'll see.
Yeah, I would think they wouldn't do that, and the names that are out there would be, for the looks like 4-3 guys. Um, I don't know how they're going to thread this needle this offseason, because if you got Burrow, a new Chase contract, a new T contract, a new Henderson contract, and Orlando Brown, there's probably close to 50% of your cap, right?
Well, you also currently, because Paycor got bought out by a company called Paychecks, you don't have a stadium deal, to my knowledge. I don't know.
I would think that carries over. I would think you inherit that, and you have to on now. Maybe there's some clause where they can break it, but I don't know what they'll do there. But I gotta think that they're protected on that for a little while yet.
I'm just curious if you can renegotiate that to get an extension there and maybe get some capital up front to help you in what you're currently going through, where you got a whole bunch of dudes who all want to get paid and you got to figure some shit out.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they're going to have to thread the needle big time. I don't know how they're going to revamp this defense and who they're going to do it with. I mean, you would think it's almost 100% chance you're going to get a defensive player with that 17th overall pick, and more than likely a defensive lineman. Maybe a corner falls in your lap and you go there, but it would have to be one of those two positions. And I would think it'd be 2/3 defensive lineman, maybe a 1/3 shot of somebody else. But the more important thing is you've got to get it right, because that's kind of part of the problem here, is that they got to fix this defense because they missed on so many defensive picks here lately. And I wonder, I don't know, but I wonder how much Lou went to bat for these guys when they were drafting them, and that may have helped make it easier for them to move on from him, because he's getting a lot of interest out there from other teams who know he knows what he's doing when it comes to coaching these people.
Right.
Acquiring them has been a little different story, but I still have faith in the guy as a defensive coordinator. But I'm not sure what the final coffin nail was for him. I mean, I know the defense stunk this year. Okay, I get that. Don't light me up over that. I understand. Every side of the ball kind of has a down year every now and then, or that and it's not like all their money is invested in defense. I mean, it's pretty much invested on the other side of the line. So Lou was working with what he had to work with, and it didn't go great. It should have been better. And, if they want to move on, that's fine. But I just wonder if he had any say in these draft picks, because the Bengals operate a little differently than a lot of other teams when it comes to, evaluating their picks. And, they got this board and stuff, but they do lean on their assistants too, because they don't have this massive scouting department like a lot of teams have.
I imagine he had quite a bit of say in the guys that they ended up drafting, but I wonder how much of that was if offense wasn't making a move, like where the balance was between offense and defense, like who's winning that argument. If there's somebody there that the offense really wants, was offense winning that argument 9 times out of 10, 7
Correct.
times out of 10? Because my guess is they were. Just looking at the way at the way the roster's constructed,
right?
And it's not as if they didn't have. I don't know. It's not as if they didn't have early picks in the first, second, third round guys that on defense these last couple of years, because they most certainly have.
Right.
It's just they haven't worked out, and
they haven't worked out. Hubbard was injured all year basically, and was a shell of himself. It's a shame that happened, but I'm anxious to see what they do at defensive coordinator too. Do you really think Matt Eberflus is a guy that they want and can get? What?
Mike Zimmer.
That's possible too.
Just saying.
That's possible too. I mean, I think he's still got a farm here.
Wouldn't hate it.
No, I wouldn't either. I like Zim a lot. I like him a lot, and I think he knows what he's doing, and he's a really good. He does not BS any of the players. They know where they
Mhm.
stand with him,
Right.
and they know what he expects of them. And if he's wondering what the heck's going on with them and why they're not playing so well, he calls them in and says, "What the heck's going on with you? Why aren't you playing so well?" It's not like he leaves anything to the imagination with his coaching style. So I would be all for that too. I just I don't know. I don't know. A lot of this is going to depend on probably who Zach and Duke are comfortable with. And
Sure.
they'll work that out. So it's an interesting off season for these guys because of what didn't happen this past season, and that definitely should have been a game in the playoffs. I mean, when you're sitting there that last weekend and seeing what's going on, and yeah, the Bengals didn't blow Denver out at home or anything like that, but the Bengals were playing like a playoff team down the stretch, but they certainly weren't in September or October.
No, and yeah, you see these blowouts, and you just
That's the
wish.
problem with this. Let's say, like, if this was something else where it's the NCAA selection committee, the Bengals would have made the tournament probably. But
Probably.
yeah, but it doesn't work that way. Every single game counts the same, and the Bengals know that, and they should have gotten the job done. Um, you know, People moan about the Chargers getting blown out, and Pittsburgh getting blown out and playing like crap. But the Bengals were 1-2 against those two teams. I mean, if they're 2-1, they're in the playoffs. They had their chance.
Yeah. Another name I wanted to ask you about. I know that it seems that they're done cutting coaches, but another name that I've seen people questioning if he still has a place on this team. As of now, he does, but special teams was kind of a mess this year. And I know that this is his second stint in Cincinnati. Do you keep Darren Simmons?
You're asking the wrong guy, because I knew Darren a little bit, and I think he really knows what he's doing. I think they will keep him, and I'll tell you why. Because I know the team owner and the team owner's family thinks a lot of him, and while that should not be the standard, they look at the big picture, and that's the whole from the time he walked into town with Marvin, I believe, to now.
I was going to say, I stand corrected. This is not his second stint. He's actually been here since 2003. He's been here
Yeah,
that long.
I don't see that happening. I really don't. I mean, they really, really trust him. They really like him, and I think they lean on him for some advice on things. I really do. I mean, he's been around the block more than once now. That's a long time to be with one team, and have your field goal kicker strain his groin and not be having his best year anyway, and you launch him. I don't see that happening. They do have to get their act together. They really do. But they draft the punter from Michigan. That didn't look like it worked out. And they went out and found a home run this year as a college free agent that could be punting in this city for a long time. But they do have to get whatever the hell's going on with that field goal unit. They got to get those mechanics down. And they've got, my gosh, they went the longest time with the same long snapper, the same holder of Kevin Huber. And, they bounced some kickers in and out, but the mechanics of the thing was just automatic for them for so long. And all of us get used to it, but I don't see Darren going anywhere. I think they trust him to address what they think needs fixed.
Yeah, it's I don't know that he has the longest leash at this point after what happened this season. So
I'm not sure anyone does. And
good.
honestly, you throw Zach in that kettle.
Good. It's not making the playoffs with Joe Burrow is Andy Dalton. I feel like made the playoffs more consecutive seasons at this point than Joe Burrow, which is inexcusable because
He
There,
made
there,
5 in a row.
there is not a roster, even with AJ Green and Andy Dalton. I can't think of a roster that was better on paper than what you had this season. And that's
Certainly not on the offensive side of the ball.
crazy to miss
But they got
two in
to
a
fix
row.
that defense, and will they have the money to do it through free agency? I mean, they can. It's going to be fun to watch how they do this because it's not going to be easy
Well, you
with
also have
all
to
these
fix
numbers on the offensive side of the ball.
the offensive line. And Jastecki has said he wants to be back playing for the best quarterback in the NFL. His words, not mine.
What do you think about him? Do you want him back?
1,000%. I
Me too.
absolutely
Yeah,
want him back.
yeah. I thought he got better and better.
I agree, and I
I
think
thought
Joe
he
got
really started fitting in and just really became, it wasn't just T and Jamar. They were mixing him in a lot, and he was getting some prime time throws and catches, and um, I yeah, I always knew he was good, but he looked really good in this offense down the stretch.
yeah, it was reminiscent of the year that we had Hayden Hurst here. Um,
Yeah,
I thought that Gesicki kind of did some Hayden Hurst type things, and I don't know. I this team has searched high and low for a tight end. It feels like for about 4 or 5 seasons now, and you've got a guy who has said out loud. He said the part out loud that we always want to hear. I want to be back, and I think he and Joe had a relationship that you saw on the field get better and better. To your point, and yeah,
yep.
I think that's a guy that you have to continue to keep in the fold as well. So
But all that being said, they can't keep everyone and still get all this
sure,
stuff done. It's going to be, and like I said, it's going to be interesting. I'm glad it's not my problem, and I'm glad I don't have to figure out that cap. But there's some things they can do to maybe loosen up a little bit of money. I know,
the
nobody's going to
Bengals.
see less money than they can make, but there's different ways they can do length of contract and money up front and different stuff as long as they have it. As long as the Brown family has the gold bricks laying around.
The Bengals don't do traditionally. The Bengals don't do uh, the circus act that is the
Oh,
pay structure and restructuring and cutting guys that they need to cut to free up more cap space and things of that nature. So we'll see if they start to go down that road, if they've finally taken enough notes or classes with guys who have been down that road before, and figured out how to perform some of these payroll theatrics. But I don't have the confidence that they're capable.
and they're going to have to find some diamonds in the rough too, and they need to find a guard that can step in and upgrade. They really do.
Yep.
They've got to go out and shake the bushes and find some guys that fit what they do, which thank God, pretty much every team in the world does that now, but once upon a time they didn't. But one man's trash can be your gold if he fits what you do and can do what you're going to ask him to do, and
We don't
that's how
know.
you have to approach it.
We don't know what we do yet because we don't have an offensive line coach yet. So we'll see who we end up bringing in to fill that
Yeah,
hole.
and boy, oh boy, yeah. We talked about that. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but that had to be fixed.
Yeah,
The first time that guy was here, I really thought he did a bang up job,
he
and
did.
I don't know what happened.
He got
I don't
old.
know what's going on. Hey, that doesn't mean you always lose it.
This one did. He got stagnant. I don't know. The
Yeah, I
league.
don't know either. I do remember reading. You might remember this. It was one of the analysts, and he saw them doing a drill, and it may have been in training camp. I don't know if it was this year or last year. And he posted something, it may have been on Twitter, that it was the most useless offensive line drill he's ever seen in his life, and that it was going to get somebody hurt. I forget. And that's when I started wondering. I'm like, I wonder if there's something to that, because let's face it, at times that line played well. I can't, it's all running together now, either 2 years ago or a year ago, it finally, it may have been the first year Karras and Kappa were in, and it kind of started off clunky, and they were giving up a lot of stacks, but they really got it together that year. That didn't happen this year.
Well, I that's the first time I've heard that story, but at this point, nothing
Yeah, I
surprises
should have
me.
gone back and tried to look that up because it was so funny how the guy said it. Like
If
he
you
just flat out did. He was in visiting. He may have been with the NFL Network and said, "This is the most useless drill for an offensive lineman I've ever seen. What is this guy doing?"
if you're able to find that before they announce the whoever the next offensive coordinator or
I'll
the
try to find
offensive line coach is, I would certainly entertain that story. I think that would make for a good story before we talk about who's
We'll get
taking
that
over the position.
on and talk to him. We'll get specifics.
Last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here, the Cincinnati Reds. They have done a whole lot of nothing since the last time we talked. It feels like they've done a whole lot of nothing for about the last 2 weeks or so. I don't know. They still need a bopper playing in the outfield. They need somebody who can hit for power from one of those corner spots. I am out on Jesse Winker. I have not made that a secret here on this podcast. But Santander's still out there. They signed this new TV deal yesterday, I believe it was, where if you have cable, you'll still be able to watch them on the same Bally's channel that is no longer Bally's. It's somebody else now.
Well, I hope that's true because Alta Fiber dumped the FanDuel deal, but I'm sure they'll bring it back. But then are they going to charge for bringing it back? I don't know.
I don't know if Alta Fiber is going to have it or not. From my understanding, though, there is a standalone option on the app for this that you can get, and then I guess MLB TV, after all that talk, is now going to, because there is somebody hosting in market, they're now going to black out the Reds games if you did sign up for MLB TV. So now that's a whole train wreck as well.
This whole thing's been a train wreck. I don't know how it's less than a month and they report for spring training and this is still going on. And I get it's a mess. And I'm not blaming the Reds here. I'm blaming Diamond Sports and that
baseball.
Whole deal.
Blame baseball. Because you should not be blacking out anybody. Make your sport accessible.
Yes, that's ridiculous at the MLB app. That's dumb.
Yes.
If someone pays you that kind of money for that service, and I know they want to protect the so-called over-the-air rights holders or whatever you would call it, but I'm sorry. That's just part of the deal, folks. It's just going to have to be. You should not be blacking those games out on MLB TV. It just shouldn't be.
The market is too big for even the Cincinnati Reds. It goes from, I believe the market goes all the way down to Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken.
They even have some in Mississippi.
West Virginia, Indiana. I mean, the actual TV market is gigantic for this team. And I think there's like a weird county or something in, maybe it's Mississippi. I thought there was one in Florida. I think there's one in Florida as well. There's just, the market is just so weird. Just make it accessible. This is stupid. This is stupid.
I absolutely. And when you see where the popularity of baseball is going and all that, you got to make it accessible to everybody. You just do. And that's what was disappointing with this Diamond Sports thing when Sinclair forms Diamond Sports that buys the Bally Sports rights, or the Fox Sports Ohio buys them out, and they're borrowing a gigantic amount of money to start up this Diamond Sports. And it's like, why would you get in bed with someone like that and know they're probably going to be crying bankruptcy in a year or two if things don't work out the way they think they will? And in my understanding, they were hoping to hook all this in with a gambling app and all this stuff. So that's why they got involved in this thing in the first place, because they thought they were going to make a whole bunch of money off some gambling app that was going to be associated with it. And when that didn't work out, and in fact, when their first app came out, you could barely get the games to work on it. So then a year later they're wanting to file bankruptcy, and the Reds don't know what's going on. It just, that whole thing never should have happened, but here we are. And hopefully it works out for everybody this season. But yes, this is ridiculous that we're still talking about this, and we're a month from spring training when they say they're going to be carrying some games in spring training as well.
Well, and they say, Kroll says that the TV deal could lead to additional acquisitions. We'll see.
Commander, baby. They're bringing in those bombs.
I guess.
They got to do something. If they don't,
anything.
Punch. They're definitely going to be lacking punch. You got to have somebody that can knock the ball out of the park that people fear. And, there's obviously a lot of value in that, because that dude's still out there because he turned down that qualifying offer. And so he's looking for a bag. And maybe Nick Kroll's got it now that this TV deal's been finalized.
Well, the fact that they had to wait for this TV deal to get done does not give me any confidence that they're going to do anything.
I get
it. You should have already been doing the things, because how do you sell more tickets? You put a winning product out there. This city is dying for a winning team. The soccer team is filling the stadium because they're doing things.
Right. What's surprising too, and we see the bad Reds crowds, but remember when McLean and Ellie and those guys first came up, and then they went on this 11-game winning streak. I mean, that went from a 12,000 crowd on a Tuesday night to the following Tuesday having 30 or close to it, 28.
Correct.
That's starving. A huge difference.
This city is starving for a winner. Starving.
And they're starving for the Reds to be a winner, because they're still, I'm old. I grew up. I enjoyed the Big Red Machine when I was a teenager, all that fun stuff. And, my kids were able to see the history of all that, and me talking about they're big Reds fans, and they'll go to games if the Reds are worthy of going down and seeing some excitement. And I think there's a lot of people like that in town that, maybe go to 2 or 3 games a year and instead would go to 10 to 15 if it was a winning product. And you're going down there and you're watching the Reds run the bases and bop a few long balls, and God bless them, they've got some starting pitching now that honestly makes for good viewing too. We all love the strikeout.
Banana Bob's got to figure it out. But yeah, I think that's the only thing that you're really missing at this point. You've started to sign some guys to the minor league tryout deals and things of that nature. You've got plenty of young talent that you've accumulated at this point, that you should be due for a breakout from 1 or 2 of them at this point in time. If they're as highly heralded as we all think that they are. So we'll see.
Another thing to keep an eye on, tomorrow's International Signing Day. So I don't think the Reds will get their hands on that pitcher. All the other prospects are like 16 and 17-year-olds that you would be waiting several years on, that are highly rated, that are expected to get the big bonus money. But what if they landed that pitcher? How fun would that be?
He was trying out. Somebody got a picture of him. Looked like he was working out for the Padres yesterday.
I expect it'll be somebody else, but I would sure love to see that dude here for, even if it's 1 season.
Roki Sasaki.
That's it.
That all said, there is a name that's not going to be with the Reds this season, as it was announced today that Bubba Thompson. Is that a name that you remember?
Yes, it is. It took me a second, but yes.
Did you see what happened to Bubba Thompson?
No.
He is 26 years old. Keep that in mind. He is going to be a walk-on. He played high school football and was a quarterback. He is going to be a walk-on for South Alabama, for the football team of South Alabama. He has 4 years of eligibility.
I'm guessing he's a dual threat with those wheels he has.
Probably. But how wild is that?
That's
That this
very
dude,
wild.
he
26 years old?
he apparently turned down when he was drafted by the Texas Rangers. He turned down going to Alabama for the money
Oh,
that he made.
really?
The money that he made going to the Texas Rangers, and now South Alabama's getting him as a walk-on at 26 years
That's
old.
interesting.
It'd
That's
make a hell of a movie if he had success.
Oh, you
there.
got that right. I mean, look, he goes to South Alabama and lights it up 1 year, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get some money from somebody.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to, if he lights it up, and, if you got a 27-year-old sophomore coming in, like, are you worried about that dude doing what your 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds do?
Well, no, not at all.
Right, exactly. That die's being passed.
Georgia's dying for a guy like him.
Right.
Right. Well, we're not terribly far removed from even Chris Winkie when he was down at Florida State, I believe.
And the kid that was at Oklahoma State that the Browns drafted, Whedon, is that who am I thinking of the right guy? Brandon Whedon, was that his name?
Whedon, yeah.
He had some age on him.
Dylan Gabriel is like 32, so I mean,
it seems like it. But I mean, there's gosh, I'm trying to think of the athlete I was thinking of. Oh, well, hell, the running back coming to UC is 24, right?
Tawee Walker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he laid out a couple years after high school, which is a soft spot in my heart because I laid out a couple years after junior college trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do with my life? Cut the back of the rest of it? Work construction? I don't know.
I just thought that was an interesting story about a now a former Red.
Very interesting. I'm going to be rooting for him. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
I want to keep an eye on this.
It'll certainly be interesting to see what he does down in South Alabama.
When he was recruited in Alabama, was that as a quarterback?
I don't know the answer to that. I just kind of skimmed over the article.
Probably is. I mean, just given, that must be his thing, but I'm going to have to look into that. That's really interesting. Really interesting.
As he was an outfielder, he certainly has an arm. So, I would.
Right.
I don't know.
That's funny. Well,
we'll see what happens with old Bubba Thompson.
Bubba's going to be getting hit up by those younger kids on the team to go out and buy certain bottles.
Well, he's there for a reason. You don't just quit baseball because he could have made easy money just hanging out in the minors.
Totally. But it's good on him that, give it a shot. What the heck?
Sure.
And so I wonder how, so if he starts his college clock, like given his age and everything, he could probably leave after 1 or 2 years. Just say he lights it up and somebody in the NFL is like, yeah, we'll take you, by the end of night 2. Would he be able to leave after 2 years?
Potentially. I don't know how that would all.
That rule reads. I'm going to have to look that up.
I don't know.
He might be able to leave after 1.
I don't have anything else here unless you have anything else.
No, Bubba blew my mind. That's a good one.
High school basketball, anything going on there?
Nah, I honest to God, since I had my surgery, I lost touch, but I will fill you in next week. I promise.
Very good. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up then here on this Tuesday. We will be back here on this very same channel in the Cincy Light Studios next Tuesday at 9:00. But we do thank Remington Tavern for sponsoring this little show. You can find them at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Check them out on Instagram at RemyTavCincy or follow them on Facebook. But for George Vogel, I'm Aaron Smith. We'll be back here next Tuesday, 9 p.m. to discuss all of your Cincinnati sports.
Thanks, Aaron.